What is up, everybody? Turboverse here today, and we have to talk about Sony fanboy Colin Moriarty. It seems like every few months this guy comes out of hiding just to make some type of ridiculous statement about Xbox, and that seems to be like an ongoing thing. Like every other month, or every few months, it's like he says some ridiculous thing about Xbox, and he gets some type of traction, and then people clown this guy for the entire post, as usual. But this time, he's saying that. The Xbox argument is simple: thoroughly outclassed by their competitors with access to orders of magnitude fewer resources over a continuous period of more than 2 decades. Their only way to compete is through brute force. And that is not true, because Sony does the same thing as well. It's like Sony buys a lot of third-party companies and makes their content exclusive, or buy new studios and publishers and make them exclusive to their platform. So once again, why is that when Sony does it, it's okay, but when Microsoft does it, it's a bad thing? And that's the only way that they can compete when Sony does the same thing. It's like, if anything, Microsoft is learning from Sony, and they're just applying Sony's tactics back on them. But, this is the clip that he wanted to show us. And you can see more of this guy shilling for Sony for 4 hours of his new episode on Patreon. But once again, this guy makes no sense, but the Sony fanboys are going to agree with this guy like always, but anybody else would know that this sentiment makes no sense. But let's listen to the clip. Let's not prolong it. Let's listen to this clip where he says that, hey, Microsoft just can't compete and they're just got to buy up everything. Let's listen to it.
This is something that resonates with me because as I listen to the testimony and read the stories and read all the documents and the discovery, the thing that I'm brought back to, and this is just my honest take, and people can take it however they want, is that why are you so vociferously rooting for the company that's telling you they're so bad at this that they need to go buy things?
And that's the same thing for Sony, but I don't even say Microsoft was saying they're bad. It was like a lot of people prefer Xbox. They prefer Xbox. They prefer Xbox over what Sony is doing. So it's just funny he says they're just so bad they just gotta buy things. Is that the reason why PlayStation has to keep Final Fantasy games off Xbox? Shouldn't it be the opposite? Like if you're so much better than the competition, if PlayStation's so much better than Xbox, then why do you have to pay to keep Final Fantasy games off Xbox? That doesn't make any sense to me. But he says Microsoft was so bad. But I think it's the opposite way.
Their entire course of operation throughout the entire case is how bad they are at it. That they can't.
Well, first off, he says he keeps saying bad, but they're saying that they're in third place. I like how he wants to just like the whole like mix up right there. They're in third place. It's like they're not bad. It's like, are we gonna say that Is we gonna say that Pepsi is bad because it's not first place over Coca-Cola? Like, really? just listen to the terminology. It's just bad. It's just hilarious.
Do it. In fact, Phil Spencer had said about mobile gaming that they couldn't do it, quote unquote, organically, right? Like admitting it. Now that's maybe true, maybe not.
Sony couldn't do mobile game, but what are you talking about? Like, remember when Sony tried to do handheld gaming for 2 different iterations, the PSP and the Vita? They could not stand up to Nintendo, so they bought out the market. But this is blame Microsoft for not being able to do more than one thing at once, when Sony themselves couldn't even do it. Like they bought out the handheld market. It's like their fan base wanted a Vita 2, which they're just never gonna do because they know they can't compete with Nintendo. So are you gonna talk about Sony couldn't compete with the different markets as well, or maybe just focus on Microsoft?
But my biggest thing is not that you're rooting for an entity, right? I think about small market baseball teams. This is a weird example, and I know it's out of your wheelhouse, but
sports. My brain just shuts off when people mention sports. But what does sports have to do with video games? I don't know, but maybe he explained. Maybe it makes some sense somehow.
In the MLB, unlike the NFL and the NHL, there is no salary cap, meaning that teams can spend whatever they want, like on players. So the Yankees often spend hundreds of millions of dollars more than other teams, while in the NFL, everyone spends the same amount of money. And so in the NFL, you have a lot of it is general management.
Bro, they're just shaking their heads. They have no idea what this guy's talking about. I'm pretty sure none of them can like regurgitate what this guy just said. They're just like, yeah, whatever, guy, whatever. As long as I'm getting a paycheck, I'm just gonna nod my head and agree. Like I'm pretty sure they can't repeat what he's even talking about, because what does it have to do? They got an unlimited budget? Well, that's not even true, because Microsoft's main thing isn't even Xbox. Their main thing is computers and software. So That doesn't even make sense. Why do you say they got an unlimited budget when their whole focus was on Xbox until like very recently when Phil became CEO? So like the whole unlimited budget thing just doesn't make sense. That analogy doesn't make sense. But maybe he'll make it make sense. I keep playing. I don't know. That's
coaching and obviously player skill and making the right choices, but it's all a level playing field. In the MLB, it's not. And the most impressive teams to baseball fans are not the big market teams that win, but the small market teams that win. There's especially Tampa Bay Devil Rays. I think they're just called the Rays now. They are a notoriously small market team that doesn't spend any money and just drafts players and wins and does really well. That's impressive. And so when I look at the situation, I'm like, why are you rooting for someone who's bad at it? An entity that's
okay, so
bad
this is
at
the
it.
point. He says that Microsoft is bad at it when it just said third place. As if they're so bad at it, then why does Sony need to keep buying exclusives as well? Then, like, he has no problem with Sony buying exclusives. Well, Microsoft does it. They're bad. That doesn't make sense.
That has had more money than anyone to make this work and can't.
They haven't. Once again, they just recently made these crazy big deals, like buying Bethesda and trying to buy Activision. They haven't done these big deals before like this. They just recently did it because once again, Phil just recently became CEO and said, hey, we need to make this a big focus because gaming is getting a lot bigger than mainstream. So this whole unlimited budget they had from the beginning, like he's trying to portray, they have never had that. So I don't know what he's talking about. Microsoft has never been mainly about video games. It's like Sony, you can say, because when you think of Sony right now, you just think of PlayStation. Like, sure, they make TVs and electronics, but you don't think of their like TVs as the main TV to get or the main electronic to get at this point. Maybe when they first started, you thought of electronics, but now when you think of Sony, you just think of PlayStation. I know they have a movie division as well, but you don't think of their movies when you think of Sony. You think of PlayStation. So it's like, this is so disingenuous. When PlayStation is more heavily invested, when Sony is more heavily invested in video games than Microsoft is. But now Microsoft is investing more. So it's kind of disingenuous to make this statement, to be honest.
That has since the very beginning tried to buy its way in. Of course, we always talk about Nintendo, but
from the very beginning, they did not just buy these crazy studios like that. It was like, really? When you first thought of Xbox, when it first originated, you thought of Halo, their own IP. So I was like, I don't know. I think this guy's just full of BS. It just sounds so full of BS. So when they first started with the original Xbox, they were just buying crazy studios. And even if they did, I'm like, that's what Sony did as well. So what is he talking about? Like,
so many other things, and just blatantly throwing its money around. And of course, as we see here in these quotes, which we'll use, they have every intention of trying, or at least had every intention of trying to spend whatever they could to get whatever they wanted. This to me is a weird thing to root for. I don't get that. It's like,
how dare you root for games coming to Game Pass? How dare you root for Xbox ecosystem where you can literally play games and get points on that Microsoft Reward program? How dare you think Xbox has a better ecosystem than Sony? How dare you have an option? You should only like Sony more than Xbox. To hell with choice. To hell with options. Just like Sony more is what he's trying to say. Like, what is he talking about here, people? There's always gonna be something that somebody likes over something to something else. It's like somebody's gonna prefer Coca-Cola, somebody's gonna prefer Pepsi. Same with Xbox and PlayStation. But these guys just can't grasp why somebody would want to root for Xbox to do better. Just can't grasp it.
They're basically going like, we suck. We can't make it work. Look how badly we're...
Who is saying this terminology? Look at this terminology he uses. He says, bad, we suck, we can't make it work. We're in third place. What are you talking about? Like, this guy's such a clown.
Getting our asses beat. We need much more. It's like, why would you ever want any of these entities under their control when they can't do it? That doesn't make sense to me.
Funny how he says that, because a PlayStation is so amazing. But meanwhile, their first-party games don't even sell that great compared to like Nintendo's or whatever. So it's just funny these fanboys have praised PlayStation so much, but their first-party game sales are lacking compared to Nintendo's. Which, why can't Sony get the same success with their first-party games as Nintendo does when they drop their games like that, since they care so much about this first party? And then once again, if PlayStation is so much better than Xbox, why do you keep paying these companies to keep their games off Xbox then, if that's the case? Or make these exclusivity deals, like with Final Fantasy, for example. If it's not going to sell on Xbox anyway, why do you got to make these exclusive deals to keep the games off Xbox? Doesn't make any sense to me, but let's see what people have to say about this. To be fair, Xbox was underfunded for years. Yeah, you could still do an Xbox One generation. It's like 360 had a lot of exclusives, but Xbox One just fell off. So you can't say that hey they were just putting all their money into Xbox when that wasn't the case, especially during the last generation. If Sony has successfully made Starfield exclusive, you would be cheering Sony and saying Xbox is refusing to compete. Now you blame Xbox for doing what Sony has been doing for years. That's the crazy thing. It just sounds like a hypocrite at the end of the day. Like, why are you mad at Xbox for doing what Sony's been doing for the longest time? Like, they literally just want Sony to have exclusives while Xbox doesn't have exclusives. And if Xbox does have exclusives, they're just bad. It's like, it doesn't make any sense. You're mad at Microsoft, but you should be mad at Sony for money had in all the games. It's like that's why Xbox had to buy Bethesda and Activision, because Sony is super aggressive with these exclusivity deals. They had to fight back. It's like what he says, business is business at the end of the day. They just don't like when business sways in Microsoft's favor. That's what they should just say at the end of the day. Instead of making some stupid like sports analogy, just say you don't like with Microsoft when exclusives sway in Microsoft's favor. Get an Xbox or PC if you want to play Microsoft exclusives. Another easy option as well. Interesting analogy. Do other teams pay to cripple opposing teams? Yeah, I don't think that happens. It's like Sony will literally pay to cripple Microsoft by telling publishers to keep your games off Game Pass. We will pay you to keep your games off Game Pass. And that's like, really? So he does a lot of shady stuff, but he doesn't have a problem with the shady stuff that Sony does. Only when Microsoft buys more studios and publishers. The entire brand that you shield for, brute force its way into the market, and then force Sega out of the market. Wait, thank you. Somebody finally mentions it. It's like Sega is no longer making consoles because Sony tactics they used to get them out the market. But you know, let's just blame Microsoft. It's like, was Microsoft around when Sega was around? I'm like, Sega's out there. It's weird. Sega's really making just games now. They're not making consoles because of the Sony tactics, the way they got them out the market. And then Nintendo is not even making like consoles anymore. They're just sticking like with handheld hybrids. It's like they stopped making like real consoles since the GameCube generation. So I think Sony is keeping these guys out the marketplace. It's brute forcing their way into the marketplace. PC gamer and Switch owner here. Bobby Kotick out means a start to the end of the sexual harassment culture in Activision Blizzard King. Activision Blizzard on Game Pass, better Microsoft than Tencent, Amazon, or Google. And it's kind of funny that he mentions Tencent because nobody talks about Tencent buying up all these different studios. Once again, Microsoft buys studios and publishers is a bad thing, but Tencent probably owns more than Microsoft and Sony combined at this point, and they don't get talked about at all. Fascinating that they just don't get mentioned. Let's not forget Sony has ample time and resources to build their products line and an audience long before Xbox stepped in. And how did they do this? By being cutthroat and destroying the competition. Now y'all are upset that you're getting a dose of their own tactics to keep coping. Pretty much. You get a dose of their own medicine at this point. And you love to see it. Like if anybody can legit fight back against Sony, it's gonna be Microsoft. Nintendo can't really do it. So if anybody's gonna fight back against Sony, it's gonna be Microsoft at this point. And the fanboys are mad that they actually have competition. It hurts so much to be a pony. We know. We know. If you need a home and got millions to spend, you buying one that's ready or built from the ground up. Yeah, if you this analogy, yeah, if you're gonna buy a house that's already built instead of building one from the ground up, that makes a lot more sense. They didn't buy anything and only built studios. You were saying Microsoft got nothing. Now you're saying it ain't organic. Pony logic, damn if you do and damn if you don't. Yeah, they can't win either way. Oh, man. PlayStation's argument is also simple. We can't survive without Call of Duty. They did say that. They did make those crazy statements. So PlayStation is so amazing, but they can't survive in a generation without getting these exclusivity deals with Call of Duty, whether it be paid skins, paid DLC. Yet PlayStation is just doing everything just from the ground up. They're not brute forcing their way into the industry. It's fascinating how that works out. The precious corporation you sent for set these rules. Now you crack because Xbox has opened up its wallet to compete. Yeah, they kept poking the bear and mad that Microsoft is actually using that money they make to compete, to make their gaming brand a lot better. It's like, oh, how dare they at this point? He seems to forget that in the 90s when Sony brute force its way into the console market, man is a fanboy clown hypocrite, yeah. And even at one point, remember when that PlayStation showcase was so awful, he said the exclusives don't really matter anymore? This guy's just blatant hypocrisy. He's like the face of hypocrisy at this point. Xbox barely had any resources before 2015. It was only until Xbox passed $10 billion in revenue that Microsoft considered important to them. I agree with you on most things, but Xbox is still a tiny part of Microsoft's business compared to PlayStation and Sony. Yeah, because PlayStation is pretty much the main thing of Sony right now at this point. And it's like Xbox isn't the main thing of Microsoft, so that's like two different things right there. But he wants to try to say the same. Yankees is one of the biggest spenders in MLB and have won the most World Series. PlayStation came in the game and spending huge to get devs and look at their market share. Yet somehow Microsoft now spending a ton to try to win is bad. It don't make sense, but enjoy shelling out $7 for Diablo and Call of Duty while we get it on Game Pass. I guess. It's simple. While a lot of people root for them, Xbox releases games on a PC, while Sony doesn't. It's as simple as that. Especially if you're a PC gamer, what do you want companies to release games day one on PC if you're on that platform? It's like I don't understand this whole process of releasing on PlayStation first, then later releasing on PC. When I release them both on both platforms, you're gonna do that with. Like, why are you just prolonging it? To get Sony fanboys a double dip, I guess. Like, it just doesn't make sense to me. It's just weird. It's like they keep half-assing to putting the games on PC, but it's just like, yes, 4 hours of crybabies would rather do about anything else, pretty much. Like, who wants to listen to 4 hours of this dude crying about Xbox? But yeah, I'm gonna conclude it right here. I'm pretty sure like more people just roasting this guy. Why do PlayStation fans ignore history? Yeah, there's so many comments. People are just roasting this guy in the comment section at this point. So I'm gonna conclude right here. You can read the third on your own. But yeah, they're just roasting this guy. But yeah, it's just fascinating that Microsoft just sucks. They got to use brute force to get what they want. But clearly ignore how PlayStation got their entry into the console market by doing the same thing. Even knocking out their competitors out the same market, the home console market. But he doesn't talk about that. Just Sony's good, Xbox bad is pretty much. It's just so tired at this point. And the fact that people pay to listen to this nonsense on Patreon is even more concerning. But there you go. But I'm going to include it right here. Definitely want to see your thoughts down below. Leave a like this video. And as always, thanks for watching, and peace.